Woohoo!
Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is Sunday, February 23rd, meeting. It is exactly 1 week from the start of Championship Week. Do you believe that? Uh, and it is also time for the Hoops HD Bracket Rundown Show. And we've got a full panel of experts here, plus a puppet. I'm your host, Chad
I,
Sherwood.
I am the expert of experts. It's like the boss of bosses. I'm the expert of experts.
Speaking of puppets, we have only 1 week to get the puppet bunker ready for
We're not doing that
2025.
this year. No,
Yeah.
we're not doing that this year.
David Dorman and John Titel up here with me. Griggs in the center square, you already heard it from him. Matt Zukowski and Mike Chott to his sides. John Salika down at the bottom there. This is our bracket rundown show where we're going to be revealing a consensus bracket from I guess seven of us, along with our friend Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, also threw a bracket in. So eight of us, a consensus cross-country scored bracket. But before we even get to the bracket, as we love to do in this show, uh, let's do a little blind resume.
Oh, blind resumes. Yes.
I am
I
pulling
like
up.
the one on the left. Oh, I haven't looked at him yet.
Okay, Griggs has already given his opinion here. Titel, I'm going to start with you. Left or right, who do you like better? Do you hate them both? Do you love them
Is
both?
this a joke?
So, I'm leaning right for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, better on tier one by a lot. Even though they have a lot of tier two, you can see that they're not terrible, a 35 and a 40. The fact that they've had 4 losses to 6 of the top nets in the country makes me think the team on the right is an SEC team, but we'll see what happens. So beyond that, the non-conference straight, the schedule is terrible on the right, but the predictive metrics are better and OAR is better, so I'm leaning right.
Right. Matt, the team on the right is 2 games under 500 against those top three tiers.
Yeah.
Probably give away which conference they're in. Team on the left has a winning record in that same group. On very similar strengths of schedules, very similar
Which is
metrics.
exact. I think I have would go with the team on the left, and I think I did in my bracket just because I think basically anyone two or under was either not on my top 55 list or like toward the very bottom. Like if you were 2 games under 500 or worse in the top three quads, as our friend Rocco would like to say, you're basically eliminated.
Basically eliminated. One more opinion. Dorman, what about you? Are you with Matt on the left or Titel on the right?
I'm with Titel on the right. I liked all those tier one wins. I do see most of them at home. I do like the road win on the left, but I'm with Titel. Pile up those wins in tier one.
Well, Mike, would you agree with me that these profiles are pretty close at least?
Yeah, let's see. I know the team on the right is obviously an SEC team near the bubble.
You
But
want to
I
give it a
like the one
shot?
on I like the one on the right. I mean
Okay.
four is better than one in the tier one wins. Um, when I see the team on the left, I see a lot of wins against the bottom of the barrel, like team three. Well, right two as well. But I think the one on the right has more wins in tier one, and that's why I like it better.
I really don't like that 9-11 versus the top three tiers. That's why I personally like the one on the left. I was trying to get you guys to go with me on the left. Only Matt did it. Salika, I know you know who these two teams are, though,
I
correct?
know Stalika. I know who one of them is.
I know who the team on the left is, but the
Yeah.
team on the right, I'm going to guess that's Hookem, and the team on the
Yeah.
left, the Musketeers.
Ding,
Hmm.
ding, ding. We got a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and how about that Titel? Is Salika's Musketeers suddenly right here, right on the bubble, right with the Texas team that's everyone agrees is there?
Squarely on the bubble, Chad, and certainly with 3 games left in the regular season, um, I don't know if they can beat Creighton at home. If they do and then win out, it's a pretty nice looking resume. Even if they lose at Creighton and lose to Creighton and win the other two, um, tough sledding, but they'll probably need to win at least 2 in the Big East tourney. Does that sound right, Stalika?
I would say if they were to win out, they could probably win at least one, but I have a feeling they could win at home against Creighton, find a way to lose at Butler, then yes, they would need at a minimum 2 games to snap the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Uh,
And we won't
yeah.
even get into their near miss today.
Well,
They were up. They were up huge. I turned the game off. What do you mean?
yeah.
But let's go ahead and go to the screen we're going to be using tonight. This is our bracket. What we did was we all voted. I cross country scored them. And we are going to be revealing the top 16 teams in the nation one at a time, kind of like the selection committee did a couple of weeks ago. And then after that, we're going to go through the rest of the field one seed line at a time until we get all the way down to the end of the at-larges, and even beyond that, all the way down to the 16 line. Did I get that right, Griggs?
I think so. So, like the protected seeds, those are seeds 1 through 4. It protects you from essentially having to play somebody that was selected as an at large. And then like what are some other terms we'll use? Inside the bubble, outside the bubble, on the bubble. Pretty self-explanatory.
How about reveal the number one team in the number one team overall? And this is going to be a huge
The
surprise
San
for
Jose
everybody.
State. Tim Miles
Wow,
is wait a minute.
it's
What?
Auburn. No shock here at all. But Matt, how about this Auburn team? They're just cementing themselves in this one spot, aren't they?
Well, I said they have more wins in Q1 than most teams. They're like the more teams in the NCAA have total still. So that's where they're very solidly in it. Even though like you can sort of make an argument Duke's probably playing better, but the totality of the resume, it's going to be hard to topple them off the number one overall seed. They'd probably have to go have a losing record down the stretch. So like 2-3 or something for that to be in consideration, I think.
Yeah, and let's see here, Dorman. Duke, I did pull up there the right. I mean, Duke did beat Auburn, but
Yeah.
it was a home game, and they have more losses. So I don't even know if there's an argument that Duke should be over Auburn. Is there?
I know that Duke beat Auburn, and I have no argument for Duke to be ahead of Auburn. Duke's playing fantastic basketball. They're a fantastic team, but these wins in Tier 1 that Auburn is pounding up, this is like a historic, people are saying, this is a historic resume. And people are also telling us that the SEC is having a historic season. So now we have this incredible conference, but Auburn is rolling everybody and having no problem. They haven't lost on the road yet in the SEC. If it is possible that the one team in America, the number one team in America, is underrated, I think Auburn actually might be. That resume is so good, and they're in the greatest conference ever put together. Auburn's awesome.
They are pretty awesome here. Mike, let me go to the number two team overall. Not a surprise either. The Duke Blue Devils came in at number two overall. I think it was unanimous between all of us.
Yeah, and as you said just a few minutes ago, or someone said a few minutes ago, the Duke Auburn may have the best resume, but Duke is maybe playing the best right now. I mean, they played a decent Illinois team, and they just dismantled them. And Duke being in the ACC is not going to build up the high quality wins, but you just look at the way they're playing. I mean, they're definitely a solid number two team overall.
Number three overall, Titel. This was the first place we had a little bit of divergence between us, although the majority of us did like Alabama here.
I really think they're a coin flip with the Gators, Chad. I certainly wouldn't veto them because Exhibit A. Look at that freaking resume. But the Gators have put up a ton, and they have Hamilton back now, and the head-to-head. Oh wait, I don't see the head-to-head, Chad. But the predictive metrics, everything about him is screams. I really think this is a coin flip, but the strength of schedule is the biggest disparity. So if you want that as your basis to roll Tide, I get it.
Yeah, it's Stalika, if we're going to say that Alabama and Florida are fighting for that third and fourth one seed, it is actually important, first of all, if we look at the bracket, one of them gets to go to Indianapolis. The other one's going to have to go to San Francisco for the West region. And by the way, they play on March 5th, and that may decide that spot.
Well, for Alabama, that's just one half of the puzzle. They've also got to go to Tennessee, and they have to finish at Florida. I mean, hasn't the SEC been brutal enough? Just look at that finish for the Tide.
Yeah, God. And then after that's the tournament.
Yeah, by the way, you got an SEC tournament in there, too.
And another tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's when it gets easy after the
Yeah.
SEC.
I don't think it's any surprise, Matt, that Florida was number 4 overall, though, here. I think almost all of us had them there, except for, I think you were the one of the few people that did not have them actually number 4 overall. You
No,
were
but I had
probably July.
Houston as the final one seed. I think Houston's overtaken to where, because if we go back to Florida's resume, it's still not super strong at the top. Obviously, outside the win at Auburn and that, but like that's where Houston. I was looking 18 wins to 5, and Houston's better in the metrics. and that at least especially the predictive metrics, I probably think Houston's the better team. And that's where I said Houston for me. This is the week they jumped up to the 1 seed. They did, even if it's a little bit shorthanded. Iowa State, that's still a very nice Q1 win to go with the other wins at Arizona, at Kansas, and then the eight total in Q1 compared to 5 for Florida. That's where gave me the gave the edge for me for Houston for now. And I was looking for an excuse to basically get them to the 1 seed for the last week or two, and now I have it with them with having the 8 Q1 wins. Which, man, I remember when we started this exercise a few weeks ago, they had 0. So
Yeah.
Dorman, do you want to set him right? Because I think you actually had Houston all the way down number 6 overall.
Yeah, I still have Tennessee. It's tight. I have Tennessee slightly ahead of Houston. They just have so many strong wins. Florida, but on the road at A&M, on the road at Texas, on the road at Oklahoma, Illinois. Houston's resume is incredible. I would not veto it. I have no problem with what Matt is screaming. I have Tennessee slightly ahead today, but it is razor close.
well, look at this now: 15-4, top 2 tiers, Houston; 12-5, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the Big 12. It's no weakling by any means, but still, when you the greatest conference of all time, and that yet Houston is, and they basically done almost all of this in conference play too. Like 14 of those 15 wins, I believe, are in conference play.
And that's why I think the SEC is stronger, man. And that's why I went with Tennessee. Like Houston, some of them are Arizona State and Kansas State. And I just have a little higher value on beating Baylor and Mississippi State over those teams. But I agree, man. It's close.
If Houston ends up winning the Big 12 tournament and a Florida or Tennessee stumble early, I would not be surprised at all if Houston eventually secured a number 1 seed.
Well, Houston has a pretty wide path to winning, to doing the double. I think Texas Tech tomorrow is their toughest remaining game. It's on the road, and it's probably going to be their toughest remaining game until the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, because as good as the Big 12 is, they're not playing true road games after tomorrow against protected seeded teams. If they do that, and it's plausible that they will, I do think they're going to land on the 1. I mean, how do you take a team that goes for the double in the Big 12 and not put them on the 1?
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and reveal our number 5 team overall. Was it Houston or Tennessee? It was, in fact, Houston. They are in the Midwest region there. And I think...
No, they're in Texas. It's in the state.
Wichita, Texas.
Maybe you're thinking of Wichita Falls.
Oh.
Yeah.
Titel, Tennessee did come in at number 6 overall as well, the team that we just mentioned very briefly there. But, is this Tennessee team, in your opinion, still in striking distance of that 1 line as well?
They have to be, Chad. They won at Louisville, at Illinois, Mississippi State, Florida, Mizzou, at A&M this weekend. I mean, they're putting together a great resume. They're not a home court hero at all. 5-4 on the road, 3-0 neutral. The net ranking, the WAB, aka WAB, loves them. Predictive are great. I think this is certainly in striking distance.
Stalika, number 7 overall. Since we already have 4 SEC teams, then why don't we make it 5 with that A&M team?
And you couldn't even really punish Uncle Buzz's team for losing to Tennessee just because Tennessee is also fighting for a number 1 seed. Now, granted, Texas A&M did have their chances, but that's, like I said, not much of a setback. But I would say the only one that's really hurting is the season opener at Central Florida. But even that's a bit of a reach for what the Aggies have been able to accomplish this year.
Yeah, and I know you would have had them a little bit lower, Stalika, but let's just go ahead and reveal the number 8 overall team as well here. See, Dorman, let me bring you back in. How about Iowa State coming in and completing that 2 line here with 8 incredible teams so far, I think.
I had trouble with this one. I also had Sparty well in the mix here. I wouldn't veto A&M. I know people had them ahead. I didn't, but I think Iowa State is definitely deserving. They're also banged up. They were missing a couple starters yesterday. When they're healthy, I think they're as good as any in the country, but I think they're placed exactly where they should be as we sit tonight.
Yeah, and it's that when they're healthy, and so Titel, if this team is healthy, they're as good as anyone in the nation. But do we even have faith that they're going to be healthy the rest of the season? Just the way they've been going.
A little, but allow me to call out Matt, which I rarely do because I usually agree with him. But he said that they were a little shorthanded against Houston. They were missing Gilbert and Jones, two of their best players, and they only lost by single digits at Houston.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot shorthanded, I humbly would submit.
The start of the 9 line here, I'm sorry, the number 9 overall to start the team to start the 3 line was Michigan State, which we mentioned already. First of all, Griggs, this is right around where you had them. I think you may have had them at the bottom of the 2 line, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really, really liked that win at Michigan. I liked them before that win, but I liked them a lot more after that win because I mean, it was a road win against a probable protected seed. And if you just look at this profile at Illinois, and I know Illinois is incredibly schizophrenic, but 6-2 in true road games. Purdue at home's a good win, but that win at Michigan, that's kind of what did it for me.
Titel, I got to go back to you because you would have had this Sparty a lot lower and actually had their conference mate Wisconsin above them.
So I understand recency bias says if you blow the huge lead against the Ducks, then you should pay the penalty for it. I'm not there with it yet. I love that these teams will play on March 2nd, so we'll let the on-court result speak for itself. But and maybe I'm biased because Wisconsin, I think, is still making free throws against Arizona after that ridiculous game back in November. I get it, and I wouldn't veto it because they look very similar profiles to me.
I guess one thing I do look at, Titel, though, is 13-3 conference, 11-5 conference. I get it's unbalanced schedules, but they're 2 games. Sparty's 2 games ahead. Doesn't that count for something?
It does, Chad, and it counts for 2 games. And if you think that deserves to put them above it, I get it. But again, I would wait till this weekend and see what happens.
All right. Mike, at number 10 overall, how about that Wisconsin team?
Yeah, I mean, they had a huge lead against Oregon and lost in overtime. But I think, Wisconsin overall has a very solid profile. You can see that they have the win at Purdue and they have a lot of good road wins in that tier 1 area. But what really helped them here to be the number 10 team overall is that so many teams in that 7 to 12 or 13 range lost. And, it's all relative. So that's why Wisconsin wasn't penalized too much, even though they lost at home to Oregon.
I think that cost them a seed line, probably, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it could have been a lot more had the other teams around them won, but it didn't happen. So
we have dear Stalika. How about St. John's coming in at number 11 overall?
wow.
How about the
Wow.
Giants all the way up there?
Vic Pitino doing his magic.
Well, this is a team that's a full 2 or 3 games ahead in the Big East race right now. I mean, Creighton with their win today, they're going to be somewhat within striking distance, but it's probably going to be a fait accompli that St. John's could probably wrap up the Big East title at home against Seton Hall, barring a collapse at Butler right here. A lot of their damage is going to be within tier 2 and tier 3, but when you have a multiple game lead in the Big East, that's got to count for something.
Yeah, Matt, they still obviously have their toughest game left to end the regular season at your Marquette
Which I
team.
think
But
if they wanted to be probably on the 3 line, they may need that game. But I will say how wins are in tier 2 are not the same. UConn, Creighton, New Mexico will all be in our field. Xavier fairly close, I think, if not maybe at the back. And even Villanova, they were on my top 55 list. They weren't among the teams in the field. So that's again, those tier 2 wins are a little bit different than say whatever, to use a Joby term, the tier 2 of a Mountain West of a Colorado State at home, for instance.
Yeah, they don't top out quite as high as the other protected seeds. I had them on the 4 line. I'm not disagreeing with the rest of the committee. They just ended up a lot higher than where I thought you guys would put them. Not a lot higher, but higher.
there were, I think, 5 of us that all had them on the seed line. The highest they got in was 10. Lowest as low as 16 overall, but
Well, as I understand how voting works, somebody must have had them on this seed line because here they are on this seed line.
uh, just for that, Griggs, I'm not going to you for the next team.
What
Let's Dorman.
Chad's just mad because I got a bigger TV and fast internet.
How about Texas Tech coming in there as our last 3 seed?
Very deserving. Very deserving. They have some incredible wins. And I had some teams that were tight with them here, but some wins at Houston. I mean, they're not going to be probably anyone else's resume is going to have a win at Houston. They're piling up. They're doing great in the Big 12. They're 12-4 in the conference, 11-5 against the top 2 tiers. That set them apart and got them the last spot on this seed line. I think they deserve to be right here.
Yeah, and this is despite the fact that they lost that game at TCU this week. But again, I think as Mike mentioned, so many of these teams did lose games this week. And yes, they are in the same region as Texas A&M, so little old Big 12 Southwest Conference, it's like a Southwest Conference matchup there potentially.
Yeah.
And they went on the road and lost to TCU, but then they came back home and beat West Virginia, a tournament team I believe we'll see in a little while. So I thought the week was, pretty neutral.
I missed the Southwest Conference. It was
But
awesome.
Mike, I got to go to you next because number 13 overall is your Wolverines on the 4 line there.
That's a good line or a good
Yeah,
team.
I had them at 14, so that's about right. Michigan, Wisconsin, they benefited because other teams around in that area all lost, so they didn't drop that much. They're fortunate to be at 13 for now. I mean, losing to Michigan State at home, it's not it's not terrible. Michigan State's one of the elite teams, and but the thing is, that said, you judge overall on the whole season, not just one game. Michigan's got a ton of quality wins, especially on the road, as you can see, and being at the top of the 4 line is about right.
Mr. Titel, I think I'm going to go to you next. Number 14 overall. How about Arizona, your school?
They got
You
hosed.
You got to put me in the same bracket as Wisconsin. Thank you.
Yeah, of course we do.
Yes.
You got to get past Duke to get there, though. So
Yeah.
Ask Dorman if he's more afraid of Duke or Wisconsin after I'm done.
Wisconsin.
Thank you. Losing to BYU at home, never good. Stuff happens. Duke has already beaten us in Tucson, so yes, I don't gloss over them. I don't think we're gonna cakewalk over Cooper Flag or anything. But yes, I think 4 seeds sounds just about right. I'm still very concerned about this team because I've said all year that it's been the inconsistency and the lack of offense. But last night, they were making threes and they still lost, which is even greater cause for concern, I think. And Iowa State is looming large after we beat them on the Caleb Love 60-footer to get to overtime last month. I think they are going to be ripe for revenge. So I'm hoping that your injuries that you mentioned previously are still around, but time will tell.
So for every win you have on a miracle because of a miracle shot, you get a loss thanks to an absolutely atrocious foul call.
It evens out in the end, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure here. Let's go number 15 overall. And Stalika, how about Purdue? Talk about a team that's falling and falling fast here on this list, barely holding on to the top 4 seed.
Well, they've had a bit of a losing streak of late, and they didn't really look that great in the road against Indiana today. In fact, I think one of the running jokes in our email thread was Matt Painter having an audition for the Indiana job, and
Yeah.
if the end result was an Indiana victory, well, mission accomplished.
Well, he was in Bloomington today. He was there.
Griggs, I hate to say that I agree with you, but you and I were the 2 people that actually would have had Purdue number 17 overall out of the top 4 seed lines.
Yeah, I still like this team. They are in a bit of a tailspin. I think, is it 3 or 4 straight losses
4,
now?
sure.
4.
Yeah, and while the previous 3 were against really strong teams, even though it was on the road, even though it was a rivalry game, they just did not look like a protected seed today. This is a game they should have won, I think. And not only did they not win it, they were kind of not really boat race, but at no point did it feel like Indiana was not in control of the game, and Purdue just not playing up to their ceiling in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the other three losses were Wisconsin home, at Michigan State. I agree with you. Those are excusable. This one is not, especially to
Yeah.
lose it by 15 points. That's
Right. And this was a team that I mean, not, I think, I don't want to say that I thought they could reach the one line, but I was having them pretty high on the two line. I loved how they were playing. So a bit of a surprise. And then you look at that and you got Penn State on there too. I mean, it wasn't just
But Penn State was
Ohio
much
State
healthier
at
at that
home. I
time,
mean,
though.
this does not, I mean, could you make a case that they should get a protected seed? Sure. But there's starting to show signs of not being one.
I think what's amazing is Penn State is a quad one loss, but they may not qualify for the Big Ten tournament, as we'll get into tomorrow.
Interesting.
yeah. And they also have that home loss to Ohio State. But let's see here. Matt, the last of our protected seeds, number 16 overall in the Midwest region there. How about Kentucky? Yet another SEC team.
Yeah, that's what we're meant. I would have loved to have found someone else, but everyone else, especially if your team name started with M, you lost this weekend. So therefore, even though Kentucky did as well, at least it was against Alabama, and I don't love having a 500 in conference team up as a protected seed, but there weren't other options. Like, there's someone we haven't mentioned yet that I'm eye on. St. Mary's. That's like they're probably not here yet, but like if they win out, that's who I think might be able to take this final protected seed.
Yeah, and Dorman, the thing with Kentucky when I was looking at them is I just can't get past those 5 wins against top 10 net teams.
I have them ranked too high every week. I can't figure out this resume. Kentucky fools me. I put them up. I bring them down. Exactly, Chad, though. I see them top out. They've beaten Florida on our one line. They've beaten Duke on our one line. Tennessee twice, fifth or sixth overall. It just tops out so high. But I agree with the guys. The last 3 or 4 teams we put in, they deserve to be higher than them. And there's one that's about to pop that you could argue should be ahead of Kentucky. So Kentucky is no lock right now for a protected seed. They better get going. They go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they need to win that game, and so does Oklahoma. So Kentucky's got their work cut out for them.
I'm going to start going to one full seed line at a time here. Mike, let me bring you back in as we reveal all 4 of these 5 seeds. I want your thoughts on them as they pop up here. But what we see in this line here is Mississippi State, Missouri, Marquette, and Maryland. How about all these M teams?
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. I mean, I had Missouri 17 down to Mississippi State. Maryland's fast rising. You know, for a long time they'd been 7 or 8, and they've really risen up the ranks. And this is spot on. I mean, these are my 5 seeds. So, these are all strong teams in major conferences.
When you look at Mississippi State and Mizzou and Kentucky, what makes Kentucky pop more than those particular two? Because I know Kentucky tops out pretty high, but
Exactly that.
6 and 3 on the road, those are pretty good profiles. And Mizzou doesn't top out so bad themselves at Florida, at Mississippi State. I think I had both these teams ahead of Kentucky because in addition to topping out, while not as high, they certainly bottom out nowhere near as low.
Yeah, well, Stalika, what do you think? Is there a case that Griggs is making that Mississippi State and Missouri should both be ahead of Kentucky?
Well, it's not a whole lot of wins away from home from a team like Missouri, but when one of those wins is in the swamp, you're going to score big points on that one. You look at Mississippi State, I think the best thing they have on their resume is the A&M win plus the sweep over Ole Miss. I mean, SMU, I know it's showing like in 1A, but I don't think the Mustangs are going to be in anybody's top 40, shall we say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Griggs, I disagreed with you most on Mississippi State. You actually had them number 16 overall. I had them down on the top of my 7 line. Just because, yes, they have good overall road and neutral
6
records.
and 3, yeah, that's
But who did they beat on the road? Yes, Ole Miss,
Memphis,
great.
Vandy. I mean, the thing is, like, while those aren't Vandy at home has been phenomenal this year. I think
But
they deserve
hold
a
on a
lot
second,
of credit for that.
Griggs. You're comparing them to a team that won at Tennessee, won at Mississippi State. You're ranking Kentucky, Mississippi State above Kentucky,
And beat
despite the fact
Duke
that
away from home.
and beat Duke away. Thank you, Matt. And the Gonzaga win, and the Florida win, and the Tennessee win. I just don't think they're in the same ballpark as Kentucky, quite honestly.
It's the same ballpark. I think it's at least close, but I don't know. To be honest, I have a hard time placing Kentucky, because 2-6 in true road games overall, and some of their losses are Ohio State, Georgia. But I don't. It could go either way. But the one thing when I look at Mississippi State, I think that Vanderbilt on a neutral floor is respectable. Vanderbilt at home is almost nothing because they're not a very good road team, but they are a home court hero that has beaten top 10 teams at home. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that win.
You know what win you can get in the state of Tennessee that's better than winning at Vanderbilt or at Memphis? How about winning at Tennessee?
Yeah.
And how about that continue that by sweeping them on the season?
Yeah.
But anyhow, we do have to move on here. Titel, real quick, one of the team on this line was that Maryland team that's now all the way up to the 5 line, despite you guys laughing at me preseason when I said this was a tournament caliber team. Your thoughts on them?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we laugh at you for a lot of reasons, Chad, but we should not laugh at you for that one because this team has exceeded expectations. I was a little nervous when they started 1-3 in conference play, but since then, just beating everybody in sight. Whiskey, Illinois, and all the crappy teams in the Big Ten. Huge game when Sparty comes to town on Wednesday, and then they have to go to Michigan the following week. I think this is right about where I have them. My question for you is, if they play Michigan on March 5th, which they do, and if they play Michigan in the Big Ten tourney, which they might, will they be able to play a 4-5 game in Providence?
That would be the difference. As of right now, if they do not meet again in the Big Ten tournament, this would be allowed. It all depends on how many times you play. But if they play more than once during the regular season, that 4-5 game would not be allowed, and there'd probably be some type of switch on the seed line. Probably, just quickly looking here, Marquette and Maryland would probably be swapped on the seed line.
Yeah, I said that would work. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But
That'd be a big deal, though. Both those teams would like to be in Providence, especially Maryland.
Dorman, let me stick with you on this, and let's go to the 6th line here, where you'll reveal all 4 of these teams, where we've got the Kansas Jayhawks, once a protected seed, Ole Miss, Clemson, and UCLA.
I had everything there, but I don't have Kansas this high anymore.
Wow.
I think there's major issues. They're not just losing sometimes, but they're getting blown out. They're not even in the game. There's just something missing from this team. They got Hunter Dickinson down low, a 2-time All-American, and it doesn't seem like he gets enough touches. I love the point guard, and Coach Self always seems to figure it out, at least in the regular season and especially in the Big 12 tournament. But there's just in something missing. This week, though, they go to Colorado and then Texas Tech at home. Texas Tech at home could get them, going on the right path. But they have a brutal schedule down the stretch here, Kansas. I don't think they'll end up on this line.
Yeah, Griggs, I look at this resume, and one of the things I keep staring at is that since November, they have one notable win. It was the home win over Iowa State.
Yeah. That's one of the things I keep staring at. I keep staring at no wins against anybody inside the bubble in true road games. And while they have, certainly winning at Houston would fix a lot of that. I just don't think it's within their capability. I almost wonder, can they win at Colorado?
And they beat Iowa State, and they were undermanned at that point, too, Iowa State.
This was a team that got absolutely pancaked at BYU. Now, BYU is in the field, most likely. I guess we'll see how that comes out. But, they're just not a very good road team.
How about the other teams on this line here? Titel, we've got, or Matt, go ahead. We have Ole Miss, Clemson,
did we forget that UCLA lost to Minnesota at home this week?
They did lose to Minnesota at home this week. They did bounce. Did they not bounce back with the win
They
Who
they
they
they,
beat
they
today?
beat Ohio, 13 lost Ohio State also.
They beat Ohio State.
But that is definitely the wrong West Coast team on the sixth line.
Really, who would you have instead of
Oh,
UCLA?
St. Mary's. Like
Okay.
I had St. Mary's at the top of my sixth line. That's where and I wanted to get him on the five, but I couldn't quite get him that high. But man, like after that win at Gonzaga, pull the season sweeping that, and then you're 14-4 against the top three tiers, 24-4 overall. This is yeah. This for me is like even six. They probably should be here, and I think, like I said, they can rise higher. They win the West Coast Conference tournament. I'll be arguing for them to be a protected seed.
Well, Tytel, what about that argument? Should St. Mary's be up on the seed line here now that they are your West Coast Conference champions?
I mean, I want to see Matt's wrong West Coast team and raise him Oregon, but since the
Thank you.
Ducks have lost twice to the Bruins, I can understand why you wouldn't want to put them ahead of the Bruins. St. Mary's is doing fantastic. I've been a little underwhelmed by their non-conference strength of schedule. It is top 100, but I just don't see a lot of tournament teams on that resume. But the argument can be made. They are kicking butt in the West Coast Conference. They should have beaten Boise. I would go with the Bruins just because they beat Arizona, but an argument can certainly be made for the Gales as well.
And it was a rare time that a team not named Gonzaga won the West Coast Conference regular season on Gonzaga's home floor.
Yeah.
As much as I like St. Mary's, I think UCLA has a lot more wins against the field. I mean, St. Mary's doesn't have that.
Yeah, Matt, I think that's a great point he just made there. Arizona, Gonzaga neutral, at Oregon, Wisconsin, Michigan State home, Oregon home.
Also, you got the seed super Nebraska's a tournament team, I think, as well. And
Okay.
that it slips a little bit. I had Santa Clara in my top 55, so like they're not that far off from me. I'm definitely playing Rocco tonight, I think, too.
Yeah.
We're trying to get Rocco in here. Maybe he'll even join us here in a few minutes. But Salika, let me go to you for the 7 line, which has Louisville, Memphis, and the 2 West Coast Conference teams we just discussed, Oregon and St. Mary's.
I think St. Mary's can probably climb up to the 7. I don't know if they can climb much higher without another win against a possible NCAA tournament team, because if you go back to their profile, the only one outside of the 2 Gonzaga games was the one against Nebraska that was on a neutral court. Now, Santa Clara, their metrics are good, but probably not going to be an NCAA tournament team. The NIT is probably going to be their calling unless something weird happens out in Vegas.
That's a strong 7 line. Well,
Yeah, Griggs. How about these other teams here? Oregon, Louisville, and Memphis.
Oregon is all over the place. I mean, you want to talk about a team that's schizophrenic, and they not just from day to day, but I mean, they've won 4 and 5 in a row and then lost 4 and 5 in a row. But my God, I mean, that is the win at Wisconsin was phenomenal. And while they had some other certainly really good wins, I mean, you look at A&M and Alabama also away from home, but then you have some severely head-scratching losses to go along with that. But this is a team that has beaten multiple protected seeds away from home. And while they always haven't played up to that level, and because of that, you can't really have them as a protected seed themselves or a whole lot of lines higher. Who would they be faced with in the round of 32 if they got there? It would be, I mean,
Houston.
yeah. I mean, they've beaten that one would be a little tough, but they've beaten teams on that line away from home.
How about Tennessee, Memphis potential round of 32 game?
Oh, man.
Yeah. That one would be fun. I kind of wish they would get that series back. When Bruce Pearl was at Tennessee and Calipari was at Memphis, they had an understanding of what a great game that was, and they were correct, and they need to start that up again. And of course, Cleveland, Ohio is where they should play.
Of course, Tennessee and Memphis and Cleveland, Ohio. Dorman, let's go to the 8 line, and these are the last of the top half of the bracket, at least. And I first note that Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org is joining us. He did submit the votings here, and I'll give him a few minutes to take a look at what we've done so far. Dorman, I ask you about Creighton, New Mexico, Utah State, and Illinois coming in on the 8 line.
I like it. I had Creighton exactly here. I thought it was going to have to stick up for him, but I agree with the committee. They're right here. One team I have slipping is Illinois. There's a few resumes I think I'm starting to like a little more than the Illini. They're banged up. They're sick. They haven't played together in probably 6 weeks. And it just looks like a team that is flat. Besides the final score last night, throw that away. They were just in the first half, they were short on a ton of jump shots. They were getting out hustled to the boards. It just looked like their energy level isn't what Coach Underwood would like. And I think it has to do with being sick and the cohesiveness of the unit. But if I was an Illini fan, I'd be very concerned right now because they don't have a lot of time to turn it around. So they better get healthy quickly.
So much like Terrence Shannon Jr.'s banner, their fortunes have gone upside down.
Correct.
Rocco,
Yes.
you're jumping in here. Yeah, let me kind of throw a little wide open here for you for a second as you get caught up. Anything the entire top half of the bracket that we've now revealed that sticks out for you as you take a quick look here that you think we were absolutely crazy on.
Yeah, nothing absolutely crazy. I mean, I think the 2 through 4 lines are very hard after what happened yesterday. Like for my seed list, 7 through 12 all lost. They went 0-6, and that made it really tricky. I ended up going. I think I'll land with Michigan State as the last 2 seed. Surprisingly, they just have a awesome 9-4 record away from home, and that road win at Michigan I thought was huge for them. But
Rocky, you're gonna want to look again. We have not put San Jose State in yet.
oh shoot.
Oh, speaking about their conference, though, we just put both New Mexico and Utah State on the 8 line. Is that correct, Rocco?
I like the direction they're heading. Utah State, I think, certainly belongs. They got the sweep of San Diego State. New Mexico continues to lead the league and really hasn't done too much wrong besides what happened with their quad 3/4 loss to their in-state rival. But it's interesting. Every time New Mexico State gets hot, New Mexico looks a little better. And New Mexico State just had a great week, so here we are. Yeah, I actually have both of them as an 8 seed, so I'm liking where the group is.
Yep, there we go. That New Mexico State loss has moved up from quad 4 to quad 3. So congrats.
Yeah.
There you go.
We said that might happen at some point this season, and it did. Tytel, let me go back to you as we reveal the 9 seeds and some potential first-round matchups as well. Creighton gets the Zags, New Mexico gets UConn, Utah State gets Nebraska, and Illinois gets Baylor. Your thoughts on these 4 teams?
Love it. Let's start with Creighton Gonzaga. You get a couple of coaches who have been to the tournament many, many times. You get Gonzaga, who's traditionally been one of the most efficient offenses in the country, against Creighton, who's got Kalkbrenner sitting in the middle to defend them. And New Mexico UConn is fantastic only because I really thought UConn was going to be one of the most dangerous 8-9 seeds in the country. And now I think they're going to lose to New Mexico.
Griggs, I want to give you 2 seconds on Baylor. You thought that this team may not even be in the field or barely was in the field.
What?
Barely in the field, and I mean, there just isn't a whole lot of there. St. John's neutral is probably where they top out. The win against Kansas, we've gotten. When we discuss Kansas, we discussed that they're not a good road team. Arkansas is very, very bubblicious, and that's really it. And while none of the losses are bad in and of themselves, I mean, it's not easy to win any of those. I think that it's a lot of nickels and dimes that have added up to, for a team to be in on the first ballot, which is essentially what you're talking about, the 9 lining up being, I think they got to win at least 1 or 2 more than what they did.
Well, I'll tell you, Rocco.
2-8 in true road games too.
The one thing I stared at Baylor is the Rocco Miller rule. They're now 10-11 against the top 3 tiers. So does that put them in danger zone suddenly?
I think they are, and I think the loss to Colorado certainly didn't help.
No.
A home loss, I would argue a home loss to TCU if you're a above the bubble team is a little bit unacceptable. I know TCU was recently on the bubble, but I think it's just a lot of bad starting to outweigh the good. And Baylor's got an injury they're dealing with, which would also, I think, be discussed by the committee potentially for the negatives. I think he's done for the year. So it's getting dicey in Waco for sure. And yeah, that 10 and 11 thing, I think would at least, from Griggs's point, we do all the voting together as a committee later. I think they would have to get down into a deep bubble vote to get in. And I think they're going to land as an 11 seed for me tomorrow.
Yeah. I would note that actually they should have been on the 10 line. Baylor actually got bumped up to the 9 line because of a swap, because of a BYU problem with their seating. BYU is a team that should have been on this line. Baylor was the top of our 10 line. BYU actually got dumped down to our 10 line there as we reveal them. San Diego State, West Virginia, San Diego State getting Louisville, West Virginia getting Memphis, Vanderbilt getting Oregon, and a little old school West Coast Conference.
West Coast
BYU, St.
rules.
Mary's.
Oh yeah.
Matt, your thoughts on these 4 teams?
Yeah, this is about where I think these all are, just ahead of the bubble, not inundated, but they're there. And then Vandy, the nice win yesterday to kind of solidify themselves here and not having to say to go to dated. And that the one, and this is again, man, you're now here, Rocco. I put UC San Diego on my 10 line personally.
Nice. I like it.
I did too. We need to discuss West Virginia. I have major question marks about them. And as far as they're another team that I'm having a hard time placing because you have to factor in the injuries. They are clearly not the same. And while you don't ignore what they did before the injuries, I don't think that I think you have to look at it through a prism as that they probably wouldn't beat Arizona or win at Kansas or beat Iowa State now.
Dorman, what about that? Here's another team 10 and 11 against the top 3 tiers as well.
And going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that going in the wrong direction is right. But a lot of these resumes are tight when you're looking at these teams, and it's just like the NCAA committee. It's like, really, what do you believe in? What do you base your, what are your beliefs? Which metrics do you buy into? I'm with Matt. I have UC San Diego higher than most too. And I went with them and looked at closely against San Diego State with them. The one win San Diego State I can't get out of my mind is the Houston win. It was a neutral, I believe, over Thanksgiving in Vegas. And to me, that the entire resume is being held up by that win. I like the Creighton win. It was also that same week, Thanksgiving in Vegas. But those 2 wins are basically holding up this whole resume. But again, it's a 1 seed, so it should hold a lot of value.
Well, the win at Boise State to me has value because I think only one visiting team has won at Boise State.
Yeah, it's hard to win at Boise.
Yep.
Michael, you stole my bullet point. Nice. I like it.
I think I got it from you on Twitter.
Hey, it's all good.
Stalika, Vanderbilt's worthy of a little discussion as well. This is, a team with only 2 true road wins, and neither of them against a team that's anywhere near the bubble. Should this team really be here?
That's something you typically hear about a bubble team, but when 2 of those wins are against a protected seed teams like Tennessee and Kentucky, it's going to have them hanging on by a thread on the right side. Getting the win against Ole Miss obviously wasn't going to hurt. Now they'll have one more chance against Texas A&M to at least get a solid road win, but the final day of the year where they go to Georgia, at least that would somewhat pad their road record if they can pull that off, because Georgia's going to be a pretty desperate team themselves. But when I look at the alternatives, I am going to give a yes vote for Vanderbilt at the moment.
Yeah, because when you start looking at the alternatives, much below this.
Yep.
It's not a pretty sight.
I guess I still, I was the lowest of everybody on Vanderbilt, actually by 6 spots. I had them at 46 overall. The next highest was 40 overall. Because it's kind of maybe David Griggs wearing off of me here, but I need that road win. I don't have it. And the 323 non-conference strength of schedule is so bad. I get you playing the SEC, but you're 6-8 in the SEC. You're below 500 in that conference.
Yeah. And I think that if they don't win that last game against Georgia, it's going to be, I still think they'll get selected, but there's reasons not to. That's a week out of conference schedule and only 2 wins away from, or 2 true road wins.
Let's go
We
to
one voted neutral, though.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to
They're
the
3-1
11.
neutral, yeah.
Let's go to the 11 line here. And Rocco, I want to ask you about these teams. Is we actually see three auto bids coming in here on the 11 line, all above the bubble. And VCU, Drake, and UC San Diego. Oklahoma has the one at-large team on this line.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with all four of them at this point. I moved Oklahoma up to 10 or 9 after a really important win yesterday. I know it's brutal because they haven't been great in the SEC, of course, but that was an important win over Mississippi State. They have the great non-conference resume, and that's the one thing holding them up. They're the only team that's possible to go 6-12 and still maybe get a bid. But I feel good enough about them. And like you guys said, the bubble's not really full of many options right now. So they still are better than most of those options. And then the other three, I mean, VCU thumped George Mason. Their metrics, once they're in the bracket, is very strong. They could actually, I think they're going to land on the 10 seed line for me. And then UC San Diego speaks for themselves. They're right behind them. And Drake's got the best resume of those three. And they just don't have the power numbers. So I do think Drake probably lands as an 11.
I was going to initially say this for a final thought, but I'm thinking that conference record, frankly, is less and less of an emphasis with the committee. Wasn't it back in 2018 when Arizona State had a god-awful conference record in the Pac-12?
They're 8-10 in an awful Pac-12. That was, yeah.
Well, of course, that was also the same year where the TBS decided, let's introduce all of our at-larges alphabetically.
Yeah.
Titel, what are your thoughts on these three auto bid teams that we just put in here? Drake, UC San Diego, VCU. Do you think these teams, should they lose in their conference tournament, are still going to be here?
I don't, Chad. I get the argument for it, but I'm telling you, like, other teams who you don't have in yet, I think, like Arkansas, Wake, Oklahoma, have piled up. Well, not so much Wake, but Arkansas and Oklahoma have piled up multiple tier 1 wins against teams that are easily in this field. And I think the committee will lean towards those schools. I could be wrong. I'm just telling you what I think.
Oh, we just got Oklahoma in, actually. So
yeah,
interesting that Oklahoma went in before Texas.
This will be the case that I will make for our committee. And again, we're not the real one, but when you look at Drake and UC San Diego, if we can kind of pull them up side by side here, the win. Drake, one of the key questions I'm asking myself, and you look at metrics and you look at quad ones and you look really at the team sheets that we have to answer this, how hard was it to win the games that you won? And I think that going 9-1 on the road and playing against those Missouri Valley teams, I think winning at Northern Iowa, as good as they have been, especially recently today, was hard to do. That's hard to do. And beating Kansas at home is not as hard to do as what Drake has done away from home. And like going to Utah State and winning at UC Irvine, that is categorically hard to do. And you are holding your nose with the Seattle loss. But if they win out, which Drake is certainly good enough to do and probably will do, and UC San Diego can do as well, I don't think you ding a team who enters a conference tournament and essentially all that they do is lose a game and fail to repeat what they've already accomplished. I think that if they're inside the bubble going into those tournaments, then nothing that happens in there should knock them out. Why should it? They were already the first place team and they've already beaten those teams. Why punish them for not repeating an accomplishment that they've already accomplished?
We'll see what happens here. Obviously, they all have a couple regular season games left before we even get to conference tournaments, including UC San Diego, a real tough game against a top 100 net Northridge team coming up this week.
Yeah, and if Wake Forest went to Northern Iowa, I don't think they'd win there.
Well,
what's that?
I don't think Wake Forest would win at Northridge either.
Yeah, I don't.
I didn't win at Northridge either.
Okay. Let's go on. We have 4 at-large teams left. Obviously, both of our first 4 games. Starting in the West region, Maryland's potential first-round opponent, the winner of a game between Arkansas and Wake Forest. Couple of teams that are getting in there. Let me ask you, Matt, what are your thoughts on putting these two teams in?
I really hope that Drake and San Diego lose in the conference tournaments and then take those at-large spots because I don't like either of them. But wait, I think I still reluctantly had Wake just in, even though that was a hideous loss this weekend against NC State. Again, that might show quad two. That's their tier two. That's the tier three level loss to me. And then Arkansas, you're 9-11 against the top three tiers. I think just because there was two, I think I had them right out of my cut line, but I think just below it. But yeah, like I don't love taking that team either. Like I said, get some of that, and I'll be arguing VCU over these two teams also if I need to for VCU as well, or maybe even Mason. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I'd say yeah, Dorman, Arkansas. One of the things they actually have in their favor is actually a favorable last 4 games, believe it or not, in the SEC.
it's manageable. Absolutely. I totally agree, Chad. And 3 out of 4 might get it done. 3 out of 4 and avoid a bad loss in the SEC tournament might get it done is right. Manageable.
It's got to be
Chad,
hard to win at Vanderbilt. It's hard
Yes,
to win
it is.
there.
Chad, did I miss Ohio State yet, or we still didn't get there?
No, Ohio State has not shown up in this bracket
Oh
yet.
god, they better not.
But my question is, when I look at Ohio State versus Wake, I lean to Ohio State's resume. That's why I was asking, making sure I didn't miss them. I think their resume beats out Wake. You guys?
I will tell you Dorman, 4 games under 500 against the top 3 tiers, 13 overall losses, only 2 games above 500 overall for Ohio State. I love the top of the profile, but personally, it's just too many losses for Ohio State.
I hear you, but what did Wake do? They beat Michigan. That's a great win. SMU, that's getting worse by the day. And just not much meat on that Wake Forest bone, but I understand the argument.
And you also lost to a bubble buddy at Xavier, which is not going to help the Deacons.
So I did have Xavier.
I have X ahead of Wake. I'm with you, Stalika.
We have 2 teams left. Titel, Marquette's opponent in the Midwest region there is the winner of a game between Texas and how about the Indiana Hoosiers cracking the field?
Oh, no.
I mean,
Oh.
they've been on the outside looking in all year long, and then they decided to beat Ohio State in overtime, Sparty on the road, and Purdue at home, and like that.
Bam.
Oh.
So you're there. You're there with the Hoosiers being in now, huh?
It's hard not to. I think that Indiana would beat Wake Forest if they played them today, for whatever that's worth.
What about Xavier?
Of course, it would be the most
First
Indiana
Stalika.
thing ever.
Xavier would. I'll tell you how that game would go. Xavier would look great and dominate for 30 minutes, and then Indiana would come back and beat them.
Rocco, I got to ask you. You think you got the Hoosiers in also at this point?
I penciled
They were
them in
actually actually you're seedless. You have them at number 48, and this is the 48th spot, the last spot in our field.
Yeah. So that's where they're at. Like tonight, I got to work on this throughout the evening and into tomorrow, but that's where they're at right now. I mean, the case is you can take them right now. So last year's Oklahoma team in Quad 1 went 4-12, ended up 12-12 in all those meaningful games we talk about, and they were in until the bids got gobbled. They ended up being the last team out, and this Indiana team's actually a smidge better at 4-11. But the really ugly thing is you got to go all the way down to Quad 2B to find their 5th win. And so they don't even have a 2A win. You got to go to the USC home win and a Providence neutral court win, and then a bunch that they kind of got lucky in Tier 3 that Miami, Ohio, Chattanooga, Greensboro all had good years. So it's a tough sell, to be honest. I mean, I think I would lean Xavier or even George Mason over them, but it's close.
I would also say it would be the most Indiana thing ever to lose at home against Penn State, lose at Washington, 2 teams that may not make the Big Ten tournament, but still find ways to beat Oregon and Ohio State to close the season.
I could see that happening too.
Let's
here.
make it happen.
Matt, I got to throw it over to you also. This was the Texas Indiana winner goes up against Marquette. Could we get Texas Marquette matchup
Please.
here?
Please, I would love. Listen, I don't think Texas belongs in this anywhere near this field, but hey, we're gonna pick them, and that's one. Well, Marquette's lost a little energy here in February. In that I think you regained it real quick in that matchup, and I think Marquette would have by like 30.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, Texas losing to South Carolina by 15, that's not a good look late in the year.
That's
Oh,
not a good look, and they really needed that now that they fall to that 2 games under 500 against the top 3 tiers. Huge game at Arkansas coming up this week, honestly, a huge bubble game. But
Somebody's got to take another loss.
top
Yep.
four, top 4 teams out, and Xavier Stalika, your Musketeers were our top team out, just barely missing the field. Ohio State, who Dorman just made the case for, George Mason, who was just mentioned as well. Georgia, our 4th team out. Uh, Mike, your thoughts on those 4 teams?
Yeah, I feel like the bottom of the bubble is so bad that it's like that's why those teams that they still have a chance. Ohio State, Ohio State has some good wins, but they're only 2 above 500, and I think what four, like as you said, they're 4 below against the top 3 quadrants combined, and um, Georgia put up a good fight against Auburn, but that's still a loss, so that's why they're there among the 4 teams out.
yeah, I don't. Oh,
And yeah, they have 2 very good wins, but that's just not enough. And then
And no
a
bad
win
losses,
against
but a lot of
yeah,
losses.
right. And they do have a win against Oklahoma, which is a bubble team. So that's good there, but they just don't not enough meat on the bone for them.
Yeah.
yeah, nowhere close. I'm just not big on Georgia at all.
What? Let's see here, Dorman. What about George Mason in this group here? Also, after that loss to VCU, is there still a path here?
I was high on this George Mason team. I have been for a while. I had to knock him down a few pegs for the loss to VCU, but again, it was on the road. Losing to VCU is nothing terrible. I sadly feel as though the path is there is no path anymore, and we'll ask Rocco because he was with me last week trying to get 2 teams in the A10 in, but now Mason has there's no tier 1 wins now in the top in the A parts. It would be a hard sell.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could take them theoretically. You have to love the 5 road wins. Like in the top 2 quads, they played 9 road games, went 5-4. That's a positive record. Dayton through Davidson is 76 through 133. So, some of those are not the easiest buildings to win in. They've been really dominant in league. Obviously, the Central Michigan buzzer beater loss is a brutal one. And they lost in double OT to East Carolina by 1 point. Those are their 2 bad losses, but both of them were kind of freaky losses. So they got kind of a crazy story. Obviously, they have 4 very winnable games to finish.
Yeah.
I think they certainly need to finish with those 4. But as they pick up wins, other teams around them will more than likely lose. We know how the bubble works. And their resume right now, strength of resume is 49. That's acceptable. J&G scaring me. Joby obviously hates this team at 64. But luckily, it's not on the team sheet. So, I think there is a path. And I think they're kind of a team where if the committee can come to an agreement to put them in Dayton, they're kind of like a perfect Dayton team. If they win out. If they win out.
Well, the committee uses the J&G to know what it's supposed to be doing because it guesses what they're supposed to be doing. It's this circular logic that just keeps...
Quick look at 9 other teams that did get a little bit of love for votes. UC Irvine, Boise State, San Francisco, North Carolina, TCU, SMU, Villanova, Santa Clara, and North Texas. Matt, is there a strong case for any of those teams at the moment?
I had San Francisco in my field. That's good.
Really?
I think I hate all these SEC bubble teams, so that's why, but I had San Francisco in my field.
I got to hang out with Matt more often.
Your influences come on me I think just like this SEC of like.
I'll tell you what, Matt. I thought that San Francisco would become interesting should they get these last 2 wins. I also think Gonzaga becomes interesting for the other reason.
That's what they become interesting. Unfortunately, so would Gonzaga the other. Maybe if Gonzaga splits it and goes to WCC finals, there we go. There's our 3 bid. And they play each other in the WCC finals. Then someone knocks off St. Mary's, and there we go. I
have a feeling. I don't guess the committee, but there's just something about Gonzaga to where I think when the actual bracket is released by the actual committee, they're going to be one of the ones where we're like, what in the hell? How in the hell did they get that 6 or 7 seed?
It's always possible. They're still number 10 in the net.
Yeah, in the metrics like them, and I think that as the phrase goes, they're going to be seeded a lot better, a lot different from where they were selected.
If they get a 6, I hope they go against UC San Diego because they might get lit up by 25.
Yeah. I'll tell you a team, Chad, that there is no case for, but that I like on the court. A couple of them. North Texas. I mean, if North Texas were to play some of the teams that we have on the 11 and 12 line, I think they'd beat them. There's no case. There is no case.
I
None at
disagree
all.
with you. I
On the
disagree
court,
with
I
you.
like them.
I
What's
disagree
that?
with you completely. I think they have a great case. I think they only have to win one game to do that. It's against Memphis on Sunday, March
Yeah, okay.
16th in the
Yeah.
American Championship game.
Against whoever. See, they have high hopes that Memphis gets knocked out early.
Yeah.
How about Boise State?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that
Yeah.
nobody
They
even
need a
had them
road-
in their top 55.
I
I
boys
did.
in my top 50.
I did.
Yeah.
I
did
did
too.
for sure.
I think
Uh,
there's.
They've done a lot of damage in the state of Idaho and in the state of Nevada, and
Yes, they have.
that's about it. Because the St. Mary's win was down the street in Idaho. I think it was Idaho Central Arena, and then obviously that's a great win. Still, Clemson was a true home win, and then they get the road in Nevada, so they've got a quad one road. So they're checking some important boxes. I just think the BC and the Wazoo, the
Oof.
Wazoo losses are
Sure.
just aging. They've aged horribly.
Well, I
If they
actually
w-
beat that
Utah
BC.
State this.
The BC loss just moved up to quad 3. It had been quad 4.
There you
So
I guess that's a little better, but
That was in that multi-team event. I forget. That wasn't in the country.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Caribbean, yeah.
I think it was the
I
Cayman
think
Islands.
they can win out.
Yeah.
I think Boise can win out. They get Utah State, Colorado State are going to be good games, but they're both at home. And then they're still going to have the same overall profile where they won all their big games in Idaho. But I think, if they're still there and we have the Power Conference carnage, they're another team. Why not throw them in Dayton like a George Mason if they went
Well,
out?
like that's where we always do with Boise. We throw them in Dayton. It's their
Yeah,
home away from
no
home.
matter what.
Yeah.
well, Rocco, you said they only win in Idaho and Nevada. The conference tournament is in Vegas. So
It is. And they're a good candidate. I mean, they're playing pretty well right now, to be honest.
the other two 12 seeds, by the way, Mississippi State gets McNeese. Missouri gets Yale. Moving down to the 13 line
Oh,
here.
that'd be
as
a
I'm gonna
fun game.
Review the rest of the
Ooh,
field. Some dangerous 13 seeds here also. Purdue gets Lipscomb. Arizona, very dangerous Liberty team. Kentucky gets High Point. Michigan gets Akron, who suffered their first conference loss this week.
Yeah.
That would be
And-
the Tubby Smith Classic in Seattle, right there.
And Akron had not played a close Mid-American Conference game since their opener, and they still haven't. God, they got blown up.
Well, at least they ended it, so we got to see all of St. Mary's Gonzaga.
Yeah.
The 14 line, St. John's gets James Madison, Wisconsin gets Montana, Michigan State gets Chattanooga, and Texas Tech gets Utah Valley. Down on the 15 line, Iowa State gets Norfolk State, Tennessee gets Towson, Houston gets Morris Robert, and yes,
Yeah.
it is Morris Robert.
Morris, yeah.
and Texas A&M gets Central Connecticut, and finally the 16 line. Auburn gets Southern, Duke gets the winner of a SEMO American game, Alabama gets the winner of a Bryant Marist game, Florida gets Omaha. That's our bracket.
Wow.
Now, that note I do want to do is run through each of you for any final thoughts about what we did tonight, anything else you want to discuss at all. And Tytel, let me start with you tonight.
I think that there's possible matchups that caught my eye in Raleigh. We might have, again, I'm picking New Mexico to beat UConn. If they don't, we get a rematch of the 1999 NCAA title game with the Blue Devils and the Huskies, which I think would be interesting, although I think Duke would win. And then for Matt in the Seattle neck of the woods, Kentucky Marquette, of course, the famous D-Wade triple-double game in the 2003 Elite Eight. I'm sure that would be make his
I was
day.
at that game.
Love it. Excellent. But the real one that caught my eye was in Providence. So Chad rewards Bill Self's slide this past month by having him face VCU, a rematch of the 2011 Elite Eight that did not go the Jayhawks' way. And then if they win, they get to play Rick Pitino against Bill Self in Providence, whereas you might remember, Pitino took the Friars to the Final Four in 87, so I assume the whole crowd would be cheering for St. John.
Good one there.
Oh, sure.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the Michigan-Akron matchup. I hope it's not a repeat of like Michigan-Ohio in 2012. I mean, because Michigan, overall is good, but they give up a lot of layups on defense, and they They if you play physical with them, they're vulnerable there too. And then as John Titel referred to, they conceivably they could play Maryland 3 times in a 2 week span, because the most they can face each other is twice. So yeah, and then there's a UCLA, UC San Diego, so that's a regional affair there. And um, yeah, I think I like the way the teams are seated. It's pretty much in line to what we had across the board, so pretty happy with that.
All right. Stalika.
We have Duke on the 1 line and we have Clemson on the 6 line. But if you look at the ACC standings, there is only one game that separates the Blue Devils and the Tigers. It's very conceivable that Clemson could end up winning out, and it's always possible Duke could stumble at North Carolina, because we know the Tar Heels just love to annoy us whenever they're on the bubble. But imagine what the Tigers seed would be if they were to clinch a share of the ACC. But because they beat Duke, they would be the #1 seed in the ACC, which is something that has not happened since 1990, when Cliff Ellis was the coach and they had future NBAers and Dale Davis and Eldon Campbell on their team. Too bad they had a painful end to their season against UConn in the East Regional that year.
I would just throw out here, anybody that's for tournament expansion, I'll give this credit to John Titel for this. If we just add 2 more teams to this tournament, our next first 4 game would be Xavier, Ohio State. Just throwing that out there.
Just remember, Jerry Palm would have had Xavier, Georgia if he had his way. Real rivalry.
Dorman, you're up.
Yeah, when I look at this bracket here, it's right away. The first weekend is going to be fantastic. We all know, our Hoops HD fans know how this works. The 7 through 10 seeds get the 1 and 2 seeds, the second game of the first weekend. And these 1 and 2 seeds aren't going to like when they see Memphis, St. Mary's, Creighton, UConn, Baylor, Gonzaga, BYU. These teams can beat the seeds, the teams on the 1 and 2 seed lines. It is going to be fantastic right out of the gate this year.
I agree with you completely. Matt.
I'd say this is the end of the time of year where I'm done with the major conference teams, and I don't care what the real committees can do. I want to see teams like San Francisco and George Mason and that in Dayton. Even if they're in Dayton, I'd much rather see them than 7-11 SEC team who had a gazillion chances, or 8-12 Big Ten team, or 8-12 Big Ten and Big 12, both 8-12 20-game schedules, and that give me the 15-3, 16-2 A10 team. And then I'd much rather see that and see those teams that have actually won the majority of their games and get in meaningful games.
Great. Rocco.
Yeah, everything Matt said, I'm good. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, we're out of here.
No, I got a couple quick thoughts. A lot of first names in the bracket. Whether you want to take Morris or Robert, you got James, you got John, you got Mary, Ryan. So 6 different first names in the bracket. That's pretty fun. But I also want to say on the top of the board, I missed the start. Thanks for having me on. The 6 teams, they're all 1 seed worthy. I mean, they all have 1 seed resumes. So that's a brutal job for the committee right now. Obviously, I think it'll play itself out to where we'll land with a good 4. And I think the group here got the right 4. I had just a slightly different order, with Florida only having 3 losses. I have them as the 3rd overall. It also makes life easier to put BYU in the West with Alabama going to Lexington. But that's a silly little bracket note. The last thing I was going to say is, if Vanderbilt and Drake, and hopefully for both, I like both teams. They're not in this situation, but if they both land close to the bubble, Drake doesn't win Arch Madness. If there's a world where Vanderbilt gets in and Drake doesn't, after what happened in that game in Charleston, I will not be a happy camper. Let's put it that way, because we all know with a team like Drake, they don't get that many opportunities. That was for a championship game, and they beat them convincingly by 11. You cannot take Vanderbilt over Drake in a selection situation, from where I'm sitting.
I'm with you on this, Drake.
I'm with you.
I think Drake got the win they needed today, winning that game at Northern Iowa. I think they should win these last 2 regular season games, and I think that they're in, even if they slip up in Arch Madness. But we'll see what happens.
Two-Bit Valley.
Could happen. Greg, do you want to finish the show out?
That was basically most of my final thoughts we had already touched on, and that was these under the radar teams, particularly Drake and UC San Diego, and what they've done is not easy to do. Yeah, they don't. It doesn't line up with quad one and quad two wins the way a Big Ten, a SEC team does, but I don't think that a lot of the SEC teams we're talking about, Vanderbilt in particular, could put together would put together those kinds of road wins and win those kinds of games away from home the way Drake and UC San Diego have. Go to Utah State and try and beat them. Go to UC Irvine and try and beat them. Go to Northern Iowa, who's red hot right now, and try and beat them. I don't think a lot of teams on the bubble could, but Drake and UC San Diego have done it.
Well, on that note, I'll pull this down here. I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow night with a Hoops HD report, Wednesday with our season finale of Under the Radar, and start next weekend. It's Championship Week Video Notebook.
I think it's Saturday night this year instead of Sunday.
Yeah, we're going to start Saturday night. We got another bracket rundown coming next Sunday as well. But on behalf of David Dorman, John Titel, David Griggs, Matt Zakowski, Mike Cha, John Salika, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org. Did I forget anybody? I'm Chad
You
Sherwood.
forgot Alf.
Yeah.
Alf. I don't see Alf here, but Shadow C. Stevens is down there somewhere also. I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.